It started near the beginning of the pandemic. I live in the New York area, so like most of the people around here, I pretty immediately complied with the orders to stay home that they initiated. And I wasn't knowledgeable about what was happening, so I trusted the authorities, or at least trusted them enough that I wasn't going to ignore what they were saying. But very shortly thereafter, I began to feel like there was a lack of real evidence and information about what we were being told. I have a great familiarity as an investigative journalist with reading scientific journals and engaging with academics and scholars. So for me, the idea of not trying to actually gain evidence on my own when I couldn't find it in the media was just a natural choice. And this was such an extraordinary moment, such a bizarre, unprecedented circumstance that it was unfathomable to me to not try to find out what was going on, to just simply, we're just going to roll with it while everything's closed. Okay, sure. Main thread within my book is media criticism. And basically through what I would describe as a series of case studies of large features within the New York Times and other prestigious media outlets in our country, and how journalists failed at their most basic job, which is to remain skeptical and to look for evidence. They weren't skeptical and they didn't look for evidence. Over and over again, journalists simply acted as a megaphone. They were repeating, so-and-so is an expert and they tell us that we need to do such and such, schools need to be closed, or they can open, but only if it's safe. If there's some arbitrary, and they'll name some arbitrary benchmark that had to be reached, or there need to be HEPA filters in the school on the HVAC system. They need a HEPA filter, otherwise it's not safe. It's quite ironic and tragic that you claim to care about these groups more than anything, and yet your policies that you championed actually harm these very people. It's very hard to square for a lot of people, and I don't know the demographics of your audience, but I recognize it's a challenging thing to take in for people who believe themselves to be good people. And it doesn't mean they're not good people, but when you think you're doing the right thing, quote unquote, but actually you're causing great harm, is really challenging, obviously, for people to accept. But the reality is these policies were harmful. They weren't helpful, and in particular with school closures, this is something that happened that was not a trade-off. This was only harm, zero benefit. And this was obvious very early when schools, millions of children began going back to school in Europe in late April, early May. Millions. 22 countries started reopening schools there. They officially stated that this did not cause any observable negative consequences, yet this was ignored. Everything on one level came back to politics in America. And because of that, millions of children, healthy kids, were kept out of school, many of whom were kept out of school for more than a year. And it's so important for our society to recognize this harm that was inflicted on kids who are innocent and who are healthy, and they weren't allowed to live their lives. And it's not just about learning loss. It's just, you can't get third grade again. That only happens once. You don't have your senior prom again. You don't have that football season, your junior year, that's gone. All of these milestones and just kind of regular parts about being a kid were stolen from them, and there was no benefit for it.